So this happened last night at 7:15 p.m. In an area kind of the outskirts of the city center. Three people actually wearing Swedish jerseys who were there to see that match between Belgium and Sweden were targeted by this gunman. Now, he opened fire at them. They ran into the lobby of an office building nearby. He followed them into that lobby and shot and killed them there. Now, then in the aftermath, he sped away on a moped. There was lots of citizen video of this taking place and was going around online. And then he was on the loose. And that was the really scary part, that the police seemed to have no idea where he was. That manhunt went on all night. I think a lot of people were really surprised when they woke up this morning and found that he was still on the loose. That was pretty scary. Now, they tracked him down to this café in Schaerbeek, which is a neighborhood in the north of Brussels. He was just sitting at the café. Someone reported seeing him there. I imagine he was probably waiting for the police, wanting to have some kind of showdown with the police. He started that showdown and they shot and killed him there. And then that leaves everyone to just try to piece together what his motivations might have been.
And certainly in the newsroom here, what's being suggested, and you can certainly, have an opinion about whether this is credible or not, but what's been suggested is some kind of supposed link between Sweden or the Swedish and a lack of respect for Islam, which has kind of grown and kind of expanded in the minds of various fundamentalists to the point where they consider it to be legitimate to see anybody Swedish and try their very best to obliterate them. Now, you might want to shed a bit of light on that if that does strike you as a credible theory.
Well, this is the million-dollar question today. So, of course, with everything going on with the Israel-Palestine conflict, the immediate assumption when this happened was that it was somehow connected.
Yeah.
But as the night went on last night, it started to look like maybe it wasn't connected to the Israel-Palestine conflict and was actually more connected to this more not more long-running, but a conflict that's been happening in Sweden over the past several months, where citizens were burning the Quran. The government has seemed kind of unwilling to stop it, to kind of change stance back and forth. And you've had Swedish embassies targeted in countries across the Arab world. What first tipped police off to that is the attacker, it appears, recorded a video on his cell phone right before the attack and right after the attack. And in the video right after the attack, he says, "I just killed 3 Swedish people." Now, one of those 3 was actually just injured and didn't die. So they thought, okay, he's targeting Swedish people. And that's why that football match last night between Belgium and Sweden was suspended. And everyone in the stadium was just held in the stadium for hours. They couldn't leave because they were concerned about the safety of Swedish people in Brussels. But now, of course, he has been killed. And so they don't know, was this a random attack, but he knew they were Swedish because they were wearing Swedish jerseys, or did he seek out Swedish people because of this Quran burning? It's a bit unclear at the moment, and I'm sure they're going to be poring over his social media posts and things like that to try to figure that out.
Dave, can you shed any light on the burning of the Quran by Swedish citizens? What were they doing? What sort of people were they? Were they trying to make a political point, a religious point? What was the purpose
this was
of it?
It's a political point about free speech. So we saw similar things happen in Denmark with the drawings of the Prophet Muhammad. And then I think we've also seen Quran burnings in Denmark. Also, it's people saying, look, I should be able to do this because I have free speech and I should be able to burn a book in a public place. And the government saying, on one hand saying, this is causing a huge problem for them and sending as an incendiary act, literally and figuratively. But also those governments are very, very committed to free speech. And the Danish and Swedish governments have been loath to step in and say, no, you can't burn that book because it has religious significance and it causes upset to a group of people. That is very much not in the character of Nordic governments. And that's why this has been a big controversial issue there.
Do we know anything at all about whether the suspect, now dead, gunned down, was known to police or known to secret services or anything like that?
So we're told he was a 45-year-old man of Tunisian origin who was actually living in Belgium illegally. He had apparently applied for asylum and had that rejected about 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and was so had stayed and hadn't left Belgium and was still here. We're told by the authorities he was known to authorities as a possible threat. There were they think they were. It's a little unclear. They were looking for him. They were watching him, but he was known to the authorities.
And so the ramifications around the world reverberate. And as you say, there's not necessarily a direct line from these tragic killings in Brussels to Israel and to Gaza, but there might be. And as you know, that very young boy was killed in America yesterday. We have, explosions of hatred in all different ways. Jewish community in London and Manchester, Glasgow, Newcastle have all been told, that the government's going to give £3 million towards keeping the Jewish community safe. But that's just people living their normal lives, who ought to be able to do so in absolute confidence and complete relaxed manner, go about their business in the normal way. As a seasoned journalist, Dave, what do you see unfolding, do you think?
Well, it's obvious that there's tension in the air right now, right? And so this happening at this time, who knows what his motivation was? It could have been a combination of anger with Sweden and anger over the Israel-Palestine conflict. But it's coming at a time when people in European capitals were very tense and very nervous about exactly this happening. So in the end, this is going to frighten people across Europe, whether or not his intention was connected to the current conflict, because we saw what happened in France last week with a teacher being attacked. That has explicit links to the Israel-Palestine issue. We've seen a rise in tension, a rise of anti-Semitic attacks, both in the US and in Europe. So I think in the end, we may never know his true motivation here, but this is going to feed into a sense of terror, I think, that Europeans are feeling right now, tension over what's coming next, and whether or not the tension in the air is going to really explode.